my name is Zoe with Gallatin Valley Farm to School. Welcome to the first week of Apptober. We are focusing on apples this month. It is October, which is Apple Harvest of the Month, and we are focusing on local apples. And every week I'm going to post a new recipe. So we're going to start at the beginning of a meal and work our way through. So next week we'll do a main course, and then the following week we'll do a dessert. And these will all be hopefully a little bit different recipes, and we'll be using apples a little bit differently than just in applesauce and apple pie. So stick with me. I hope you enjoy these recipes. So today we're going to make an apple and cheese crostini, and this is a really nice before dinner snack. When I was a kid, I know that I always was hungry between 3:30 when we got out of school, and we didn't eat dinner till 6. So that's a long time to go between lunch time at school and dinner. So this is a really fun recipe you can whip together with your kids, and it's really fun, and they can make their own crostinis, and it'd be a nice tasty snack to keep them over until dinner time. So I'll show you my ingredients. The first one, and I try and source these as locally as possible just to prove that it can be done in Montana, and we're getting closer to winter, so you'll be amazed at the amount of things that you can get locally. So the first thing that we have, it is technically a baguette recipe, but I have this on the rise sourdough loaf on hand, so we're going to cut that into little sort of baguette pieces. And then I have goat cheddar, and I have one apple that is from the Flathead region of Montana, and then I have one apple that is from my apple tree out back. So kind of a mix on locally produced things. That does include your own gardens, by the way. And then we have some local honey. I picked that up at Town and Country. So this is a really simple recipe. So what we're gonna do first is, my hands are already washed, so go wash your hands if you haven't done that. And then I have the oven going at 375 degrees. So the first thing we're going to do is cut this baguette, or cut this bread into baguette crostini pieces. My recipe is going to be a little bit smaller because I just have a family of 2. So if you need to adjust your recipe, feel free. So we're going to cut our baguettes into little, sort of, 2 or 3 bite pieces. If you've ever had bruschetta, you'll know kind of what I'm looking for. So for myself and my husband, I think I'm going to do about 2 slices of this bread. And this is sourdough loaf, and it's from On the Rise. If you've never had this bread, it is just delightful. And you can get On the Rise at Town and Country, or you can go to their store location in Four Corners, and they have a little bakery style thing you can go to and get that. So I'm going to cut these in half. So each of us will have 2 little crostini appetizers, and I'm going to put them on my baking sheet here. Now this recipe, you can use any kind of cheese that you have on hand. So I have goat cheddar, and this is a Honeycrisp apple, so it's a little bit sweet. And then this one is a sweet 16, and this one tends to be a little bit kind of more tart. So it's really good for pies if you have a sweet 16 in your backyard. Now the next thing I'm going to do is butter these up, and you can use olive oil too if you're feeling that. So I'm just going to put a thin layer of butter on my crostinis here. Now the next thing I need to do is cut up my cheese. And if you're using a hard cheese like this, just cut it into thin slices or thick slices depending on how you like it. And if you're using something like feta, you can crumble it up, and then we'll just crumble it on the top of those crostinis. So whatever kind of cheese you have. So I'm going to cut mine into thin little slices, and I think I'm going to do probably about 3 to 4 slices per bread slice. So I'll finish getting these sliced, and I'll lay them on my bread slices. Kind of just layer them in a pretty way. They're gonna just melt. And it turns out we're gonna do 2 slices per bread piece. So just like that. So my oven is ready to go, so I'm going to throw these in the oven for probably about 5 to 7 minutes until they're really melty and bubbly. You'll know when they're done, and then we'll move on to the next part. All right, so while those are in the oven, we're going to get started slicing our apples. What I'm going to do is to do this the safest way possible. And if you have young kids at home, they can definitely slice up these apples, but it might help to cut this in half. As you guys know, apples are really round, and so it's kind of hard to keep them sturdy. So if you could cut it in half for your young ones, and then now you have that flat base to cut your apples on. We're just gonna slice these in thin slices, sort of looking for that kind of This is a really great time to work on your knife skills with your kids and try and see, kind of make a game out of it, see how even they can make all of their apple slices. Another way that I like to cut apples is to just cut around the core, and then you don't have to deal with the core of the apple. So if you kind of cut that big piece off, and then you can slice around the core just like that, and then you don't have to scoop it out. I will slice that one up as well. I don't know if you all ever put apples in your kids' lunch boxes or your own lunch boxes for work. I always like apple slices. I sometimes dip them in peanut butter as well. But what I've noticed is that apples have a tendency to get brown. But what I have learned through my years is that if you put your apple back together, pretend this is a whole apple, and then you put a rubber band around it until lunchtime, it'll stay not brown. All right, so my apples are ready to go. The next thing I need to do is just make sure that my honey is ready. If you have a new jar of honey, it should be liquidy and ready to go already. But if you have a jar of honey that has crystallized, which is a normal thing, what I've learned is not to put it in the microwave. If you microwave it, it's just gonna keep getting crystallized and it'll get more and more chunky. So what you wanna do is warm it up in a hot water bath and then stick your jar of honey in there and it'll melt and you got nice spreadable honey. So we have our honey ready, our apples are ready, our cheese and bread is in the oven. Now the other option that you could do if you have any pecans or walnuts around is you could chop those up and throw them on the same sheet pan and kind of toast them up and sprinkle them on top at the end. That's a nice crunchy, kind of earthy flavor to add to your crostini. So let me get these out of the oven and I'll show you how to finish them off. It's been about 5 minutes and I can actually hear my cheese bubbling, so I'm gonna go get those. So if you listen closely, you can hear that cheese. Such a glorious sound. You can see my cheese is melty and it's bubbling and it started to get a little bit brown, which is exactly what I'm looking for. So now I'm gonna finish these off, which is the fun part. So I'm gonna take these apple slices and I'm gonna arrange them kind of in a fun way. You always hear that we eat with our eyes first. So we're gonna arrange these in a nice fun way, and I'm gonna do 2 of each kind of apple that I have on here. So I'm gonna do the Honey Crisp first, and then I'll do the backyard apples next, which these are Sweet 16s. And then this is the moment if you decided to toast up any pecans or walnuts or what have you, you can throw those on right now as well. And then just to kind of throw everything together and secure everything, we're gonna drizzle a little bit of honey on top. And you can use, if you have one of those nifty honey drizzlers, you can do that, but I always like to just use a spoon. So just dip it in your honey jar and then you can kind of wait for it to start dripping and then move back and forth, kind of like you're decorating a cake or something. So we'll do that. It's nice stringy, kind of like spider webs, just in time for Halloween. So we'll drizzle it on there. You won't be able to see it very well, so it's okay if it's not pretty, but it will add a nice sort of gloss to your finished product there. So we'll finish that up. And then the final touch is plating. I'm gonna kind of plate these nicely, and I have a couple of leftover apple slices that we'll throw on there as well. Can never have too much apple. My number one tip for apples, especially when you're feeding them to kiddos, is to leave the peels on. Apples do contain a lot of nutrients, but a lot of those nutrients are found just below that skin. And so a lot of times when we peel it, if you peel even just a little bit too far, you take a lot of that nutrients away. If you want all your apple goodness, you gotta leave those peels on there. All right, our apple and cheese crostini is done and ready to be devoured. It's nicely plated and ready for everyone to enjoy. I hope you all enjoyed this recipe. Next week we're gonna go for a dinner, and I promise it's not pork chops and applesauce. If you want this recipe, it is posted a couple of posts before this on our Instagram page. It's also available on our website and basically all of our social media platforms. Next week, if you want the recipes before we get going, you can email me. My email is also in the description below this. Thanks, and I hope to see you all next week.